MAS are not the kind of regulators that you can just text on WhatsApp and say, "Hi, I'm in town, let's have a coffee to catch up." But over here with AFSA, it's more of a two-way conversation. I would say that I'm one of the bigger promoters in Singapore for Kazakhstan right now.
Thank you very much for making time to talk to us today. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me here today.
Of course. So I want to start with a very brief overview of yourself, how you got into the space, and what do you do day to day?
Okay, a brief overview. So I actually joined the finance industry about 5 to 6 years ago. It started off at United Overseas Bank, where I was a banker. So United Overseas Bank is like the Singapore version of Kaspi. That's how I explained to my Kazakh friends. So after about a year, I joined Singapore's biggest stocks brokerage. It is called Phillip Securities. So that would be like the Singapore version of Skybridge. Mm-hmm. Yes. After 2 years as a dealer, I was actually handling a lot of high net worth clients, giving investment advice, helping clients to do trade execution. Then I actually applied for this opening at a fund management firm because I've always wanted to do fund management. So at a fund management firm, I was actually more of doing back-end operations, helping clients to connect with service providers and helping them to launch funds. And I handled funds, stocks funds, bonds funds, PE funds, and also real estate funds. And then the last one is all the way to cryptocurrency fund. So it just so happened that the owner of the cryptocurrency fund is BigOne Exchange. So he's the CEO. And he was just telling me that, "Athena, do you know that my cryptocurrency exchange is trying to get a license in AIFC, which is Kazakhstan?" And it just so happened that my husband works very closely with AIFC, like the board of directors and also the CEOs and executives. So I told the BigOne CEO, I said, "Give me a title. Let me see what I can do for you," because he was saying that things were not moving along. So about a year into me traveling here and there and hiring, doing operations and doing the heavy lifting, we finally got our first license last year in November. It was around the time of Singapore FinTech Festival that I remember very clearly because we actually hosted events for AFSA and AIFC as well when they were in Singapore. So it has been almost a year since we started operations officially. Right now, BigOne has 7 licenses in AIFC. We can do everything from custody to digital trading, digital asset trading facility, yes, dealing in investments as principal and agent, and also STO, which is a real world asset tokenization. So I would say that our team is really expanding, and we're actually working with a lot of local crypto exchanges and brokerages to help build the ecosystem and liquidity here in Kazakhstan.
Why was that decision important to BigOne? Being based in Singapore, or having your operational hub in Singapore, people around the world do think of Singapore as a crypto hub, as an innovation hub, as a technology hub. It's a very attractive place to be. What influenced that decision to also expand into Kazakhstan?
I think, to be honest, my CEO moved into Singapore for more of a personal decision rather than business decision. And then that's where he met me. But I would say that Singapore is a good place to be because you have a lot of global talents and there is exposure to the global market. Like right beside Singapore, you have like the whole of Southeast Asia. And because the fact that Singapore is very bilingual, you can expand your business to China, you can expand it to the West, you can basically go around the whole globe as long as it's English or Chinese speaking. So Singapore is actually a very good place to be. But actually our headquarters is set up in Kazakhstan itself because we see Kazakhstan as the leading country in Central Asia. It is definitely the most advanced and the most progressive. And with the technological talent that we see here, plus the new political regime, because there's a lot of changes that the new president is trying to bring across, there is a lot of political stability, and that is very important for business. So we have actually decided to have headquarters in AIFC, and our office is actually right there in the same building as AFSA, because we want to be as close to the regulators as possible.
Right, and we are going to get onto the regulation side of life. I have some question marks that are still unanswered about the AIFC, but before we get there, let's just zoom back in time for a brief moment. When people think about Kazakhstan and how it became a crypto hub, let's say, or how it decided to start becoming a crypto hub, often people point to the Chinese ban on crypto mining as the sort of major inflection point. But was Kazakhstan on your radar before that ban, before all those mining operators became sort of interested in Kazakhstan? Was it on your radar at all?
To be honest, no. I think it was really the crypto ban in China that put Kazakhstan on the map as a quick and a cheap way to move their resources over and to move all their mining machines over. So I think before that, Kazakhstan was never really on the map. Like even nowadays, when I speak to my business associates in Singapore in traditional banking and finance industry, they actually don't hear about Kazakhstan at all other than from me or when they look at my LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. So I would say that I'm one of the bigger promoters in Singapore for Kazakhstan right now.
And beyond the mining operations that moved here and, as you said, are now thinking about moving elsewhere, what other types of activity is on the growing, sort of moving in the right direction in Kazakhstan?
I would definitely say IT tech. Like you actually have very brilliant and very hungry IT technicians here that can do amazing programming and coding. So it used to be India. I would say in the last 5 to 10 years, like India has a lot of like computer engineering talent. That is the way that they progress. But as you know, as things progress, the kind of wages that they get and demand actually higher and higher. So if you want to talk about in terms of comparative advantage between Kazakhstan and Indian talents, right? Kazakhstani talents are like definitely more hungry. They are just as brilliant and they are definitely more cost effective. So that I would say is their comparative advantage. They are like the up and coming because I work quite closely with some of my VC business partners. I've seen quite a number of startup pitches. Definitely there is a lot of space and there is the right environment for IT to grow in Kazakhstan other than, cryptocurrency and Web3.
If you think about that timeline of Kazakhstan's sort of love affair with technology and innovation and crypto, beyond the ban on mining operations in China, which arguably was the main inflection point, are there any other key milestones along the way that you can point to?
Yes, definitely the setup of the AIFC. So I actually am quite close with some of the founders of the AIFC, and through my personal conversations with them, I knew that the road to actually building up the whole center and getting the structure done and getting things done or hiring the right people was an uphill task. Like there were a lot of struggles, there were a lot of things that they fought for. But as the founding team, when they finally AIFC was built up and things were actually working and businesses were invited to come here and set up, I think a lot of them felt that all of it has actually really paid off. And so AIFC, the setup definitely is another huge milestone. I would say the first one would be the mining ban. After that would be, the new president being appointed because you have political stability. And then you have AIFC where the businesses can gather. And then you can have an ecosystem like fintech, Web3, funds, even Lazard, the German fund management firm is coming in. They're working very closely with Skybridge as well.
So obviously you have a lot of experience on the regulatory side of life. And when people think about Singapore, they often point to the Monetary Authority of Singapore, MAS, as being an organization that brings a lot of clarity and that people on the private sector side of life want to be around because of that clarity.
Yes.
Are there any similarities or major differences between the way the MAS operates and the way the AIFC operates?
Yes, they're actually quite different. Like the MAS are not the kind of regulators that you can just say, text on WhatsApp and say, hi, I'm in town, let's have a coffee to catch up. So MAS, usually the only time I get to speak to them is through emails. It's all very business, right? Mm-hmm. Like they tell me what they want and then I just change and do. It's more of asking them what they want and I change is one way. But over here with AFSA, it's more of a two-way conversation. Like I can actually tell them that, okay, maybe this is how I want to be regulated. And I know that you want to regulate me this way, but maybe, we can try to meet in the center. So there is more space for negotiation because we know, and the regulators also know that it is growing. They are growing and they actually do a value and they do need feedback from us. Almost every week we have a call with AFSA. Actually give us feedback on what kind of things that we're doing, what are the new implementations, make sure that we know what are the new changes to the regulations and policies. And every time I'm in town, it's very easy to just say, hi, I'm in town, let's catch up over lunch or let's meet in the office for a talk or oh, I'm actually doing this project. Can you take a look at it to make sure that it's regulatory compliant? Is there anything else that you want me to do to make sure that it is a safe product for the general public? So I would say that with AFSA, it's definitely more dynamic. There's a lot more conversations going on, and they are more reachable. Like, I do know why certain things are done and the rationale for why certain things are done. What are the considerations they had through my private conversations with them.
Interesting. And beyond that sort of collaborative approach to regulation that you're describing, which, by the way, talking to other people, that they've often indicated the VARA in the GCC, in the UAE specifically, as being also a collaborative approach to regulation, and they welcome it because, why regulate as a blanket when you can regulate specifically? But beyond that collaborative approach, are there any benefits to working with the local regulators here that you think other regulators should learn from?
I would say that the regulators here are very responsive to feedback. Yes, that is something that I really like, because like sometimes they'll come and ask me, Athena, I have this feedback from other crypto exchanges, or this feedback from other crypto brokerage. Do you feel the same way? If yes, why? If no, why? So when they actually look to us as for feedback, and they actually do find our feedback valuable as well. It's not just that, oh, I tell you something and then, okay, maybe we will consider. But there's actually real action taken, and it's a kind of sincerity that you can feel. And on top of that, the regulators have always been very welcoming. They have always invited me for speaker panels for Digital Bridge, for Solana Finance Days. And sometimes I feel like they are more of my partners rather than regulators.
Interesting. And if you sort of think about your experience in fintech and traditional finance, do you think that the way the local regulators here have decided to approach regulation from a collaborative perspective, do you think that's a trend that's going to continue in different parts of the world, or is Kazakhstan maybe quite unique in the way that they've adopted that collaborative approach?
I think it will depend on the regulatory growth of that particular country. So, for example, a more advanced country in Singapore, where everything's really more or less set in stone and they're really more in place, and they have a strong foundation, then it's less likely to happen. But if, let's say, you were to look at regulatory space, maybe in Cambodia, where it's not developing so well yet, then definitely there is more space for the regulators to get feedback from the participants. So I would say it depends on the stage of growth of the regulatory body. And I would say AFSA is right now in the intermediate stages, going to advanced.
And do you think that is one of the main factors that makes Kazakhstan an attractive place for crypto exchanges like yourselves, or financial services companies to come and migrate their headquarters to?
Yes, of course. Because I actually speak to a lot of partners in the both in cryptocurrency and traditional finance as well. We do exchange notes, and we find that it's an easier market to penetrate compared to others. It's cheaper, there is more communication, and it's more transparent.
Do you find any particular blockchain ecosystem to be more active than others in countries that are in this sort of intermediate stage of understanding regulation and collaborating with exchanges as well?
I think for blockchain right now in Kazakhstan, it's still in the early infancy stages. I would definitely love to see the tech talents here develop their own blockchains here and have a more vibrant community. But right now, I would say that it's up to the job of crypto exchanges and brokerages like me to actually make sure there's enough liquidity, because liquidity is a big problem right now. For example, today I might have demand, but there is no supply. And then, but my another crypto exchange might have supply, but with no demand. So that's why in our company, I make it very sure to let my business partners know that actually we are not competitors. We're helping each other out to build the ecosystem.
That's interesting. Is that a function of fragmentation?
Yes, I'm trying to make the market less fragmented. Because I know that in traditional finance, like not the usual stock brokerages or exchanges, they are like competitors of each other, especially in fund management and family office. So it's a very competitive industry, because once he's a client, then no, he's not going anywhere else. But in Web3, there's a strong sense of camaraderie, where it's more of a community and an ecosystem. If your ecosystem is not healthy, if your ecosystem is not thriving, no one is able to survive. So it's either you be nice, you play nice, and help each other to get by, or it's not going to be a sustainable environment for everyone.
Clear. And do you think Kazakhstan's moving generally in the right direction, both in terms of training some of that talent that you spoke about, being collaborative in the regulatory approach that you spoke about, and maybe thinking long term about how do we maintain our position as an attractive crypto hub?
Yes, definitely, because I still remember the first event I attended in Kazakhstan. It was Digital Bridge 2 years ago. The turnout, I would say, is less. There are not as many young people in the crowd, and it's more of the senior executives. There is not so much live and young blood. But when I go for AFD or I went for the Digital Almaty or CEVF or even in today's event, there are a lot more young people that wants to join the conversation. There are a lot more young people that wants to know more. So you definitely do see a change in the landscape that there is life. Yes, and I actually really like working in Kazakhstan because of the Bolashek program. So it actually ensures that your top talents are like really, really well educated in the top universities around the world, and they come back and they serve, and it's really great working with them as business partners because of English, because of the way they work, and the way that they are actually trained to manage their businesses.
Interesting question. Maybe you're better equipped than I am to understand this, but when we think about the Gulf countries, there seems to be this sort of competitive element to how they're forming regulations such that they can be the most attractive country or regulatory regime in that environment. Seems to be a bit of competition there. They want to attract the biggest exchanges, they want to attract the most amount of capital, which is understandable. Do you see that also happening in Central Asia, or would you say Kazakhstan is by far a leader in the way that they've approached regulation?
Okay, Kazakhstan is a leader right now, but definitely there is competition. There is actually a lot of competition, and it's actually pretty obvious, like when certain events get cancelled or delayed, and then another country makes up their own events to, divert the attention. There's been a lot of, I would say that I'm definitely considering expanding to other regions as well, probably end of next year. But the thing is that I do not think any of them have the kind of capacity to replace Kazakhstan as that central hub. So Kazakhstan is like a central hub, and yes, they are growing alongside Kazakhstan together and they're trying to compete, but they do not have the international finance center that is for one. I mean, they can try to build, but it's not there yet. And regulation is more, I would say, clear here, and it's more, I feel that it protects the safety of the investors more. So I would definitely see Kazakhstan as like a place I would headquarter and then expand into Central Asia, slowly.
If you had to put your finger on the single most sort of attractive quality of Kazakhstan, what would it be?
The people here are very genuine and sincere. It's actually pretty nice to do business with them.
Compared to Singapore, it's noticeable?
Yes, they are more warm and welcoming.
Interesting. Let's think about the next 12 months, the next 24 months. What does Kazakhstan need to achieve, either from a regulatory perspective or from the perspective of training some of that talent that you were talking about, to really maintain its position as a leader?
I would say that for regulatory perspective, right, it would be more of slowly changing the existing regulations and policies to fit the current ecosystem and the current kind of financial landscape you have. Because right now, the regulators actually taking a lot of, I would say, a lot of ideas from how other regulators around the world do it. But it's not a one-size-fits-all kind of template. You cannot just copy and paste over another country's rules and regulations into your own and just expect it to work for everyone. So you still have to continue making changes, to continue tailor-making it, to make sure that it suits your own culture and it suits your own industry. So I think that would be something that AFSA is already doing, and they're doing very well. So, and I do see that definitely they're going to be doing it for the next 1 to 2 years for the regulatory landscape, to make sure that everything is more tailor-made, is more customized to benefit the global companies that are expanding here in Kazakhstan. Then as for the local talents, to be honest, I actually took a look at the kind of university courses the universities were offering here. Like, for example, I compared a Masters of Finance course to a Bachelor of Finance course in National University of Singapore. And I found that even with a master's, the kind of courses that they take and the things that they learn were still less than a bachelor's degree. Yes, surprisingly.
Okay.
Yes. So I think it would be important to try to have deeper courses that are more deep in the kind of content and more global exposure, like maybe have more professors from overseas to come to share their more global views. And I would really like for financial literacy to slowly catch up to how fast the fintech space is expanding. I'm not sure how that works because I'm not really close to anyone in the public education sector. But I think I would really love for the scholarship program to continue because that I see a lot of value, a lot of business value.
Clear. And would you say then that that's your advice to the locals that are building businesses here or that are looking to collaborate or maybe thinking about moving here as a professional, as an entrepreneur, that focusing on the gap between where education should be and where it is now, is that your advice to them?
I would say it's more of improving financial literacy here so that they can understand better what is happening in the fintech space here. Like fintech is growing so fast, but financial literacy is like, it's not really playing catch up. So I think it's up to what the universities and the education sector are doing. But I do see the education ministers actually flying overseas a lot to have talks. I think one of them came to Singapore last year as well. So the Minister of, I think, Higher Sciences, always, the office has been actually looking at Singapore, how we do our public education, and then comparing notes. So I think there should be changes very soon.
What's next for Kazakhstan? What's the most exciting development that you're looking forward to hearing about?
Okay, definitely, I would say for crypto, it's more liquidity. I'm hoping to really have more liquidity in the space. But most importantly, it's actually to try my best to make sure that whatever is mined here stays here. So for example, if let's say all the assets in this country, maybe 90% is in fiat, like in tenge or USD, and 10% of it is in crypto, maybe in USDT, BTC, or ETH. As an exchange, I would say that it's one of my duties and obligations to make sure that I do not disrupt this balance. Because I operate both BigOne KZ, I also have BigOne Global, and it's separate liquidity pool. Imagine if I were to take USD from Kazakhstan, I throw it into my BigOne Global, and I pump crypto back inside. So eventually this balance of 90-10 might be distorted into 80-20 and eventually into 70-30. And you already know how weak tenge already is. And not only is going to affect the demand for tenge adversely, it will also make it more difficult for the national bank to do currency control, have physical and monetary policies to control the currency. So that is something that I'm looking forward to having a sustainable ecosystem where I try to keep the balance of the fiat and crypto like in check. Like whatever I have demand here, I try to sell it off. Whatever I supply here, I try to sell it off here. It's healthy that way. The other space that actually I'm really interested in is the VC industry, because VCs and startups in Kazakhstan is actually very vibrant. There's a lot of youths out there with brilliant ideas, and they're actually quite hungry. So it's a bit different from Singapore, because in Singapore some of the people can be a bit more entitled because they've grown up in a more, I would say, privileged environment. But over here, because a lot of people, especially the youth, they really want change. So I actually took a look at some of the pitch decks for the Startup Battle at 4:30 later. I do see some very interesting ideas.
What's the most exciting, most interesting idea that you came across?
Oh, it was the one where they use AI to do city planning, to do urban city planning. Because when I first came to Almaty, I felt that it was a beautiful city, but the planning was not done like 10, 20 years in advance. That's why you have very bad traffic jams, and then you have all those very narrow ways. So I think that would really help Kazakhstan to do better city planning, especially with the G20 new city coming up.
Thank you so much for making time to talk to us today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for your time today. I had a very interesting conversation with you.
Thank you.